Hello, and welcome to Hold the Pass, a podcast all about passing on knowledge, information, stories, and more among friends in motorsports. My name is Misha.
And my name is Fatima.
And we are coming to you today with a very special episode. Our guest, Ava Gregory, is the host of BeDifferential, a podcast dedicated to opening the doors of the motorsport world to everyone and building a supportive community, and an inclusive one too. Ava has kindly hosted us on her show last week, and when you get a chance, definitely listen to that episode. But this week, we are continuing our collaboration with her and hosting her. Ava, welcome to the show. It is so great to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me come join Hold the Pass. I'm really excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you. And like Misha said, we had such a wonderful time on your pod last week. And now we're so excited to continue this on. I think we're going to have a great conversation today as well. But before we get into that, how are you? How are you doing?
I'm so good. I'm actually gearing up as we're recording this to go on vacation. So I am better than normal.
Oh, that's so exciting. Where are you going?
I'm going to Croatia.
No way!
Yeah. So I'm really, really, really excited. But yeah, literally, it's like this mental checklist.
You're going to my neck of the woods. Oh my God.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I need to send you like recommendations and stuff after this.
Please. Yeah. We're going to 5 different cities. So send me your thoughts.
Oh my God.
That's
amazing.
awesome.
You're going to have such a good time. Yeah.
I'm so envious. I love vacations. Enjoy your vacation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we kind of want to get to know a little bit about BeDifferential. We know that it's a podcast that, you know, you educate and inspire and invite people into the automotive and motorsport industry. So for those of our audience who don't know too much about you, would you be able to tell us a little bit more about BeDifferential and really what it is that inspired you to start the podcast to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. First of all, I don't particularly feel inspirational all the time, so that's nice. I think BeDifferential really kind of came about because I've been working in motorsport for 10 years now, and there was a time in the beginning of my career where I was very much the only woman in a lot of the decision-making rooms, and I started noticing like this scarcity complex between women when we were in one space. It was either you or me, and it could never be both. And I actually got involved in the Women in Motorsports North America organization during my time working at Road Atlanta. And afterwards, when I joined Hagerty, I really kind of started getting even more inundated. And I went to their event that was hosted in Phoenix. I think it was in 2023. And just in being in that room, you leave just with a whole new appreciation and kind of fire underneath you. And literally on the plane ride home, I filled out like this massive notebook. I had 11 pages of, okay, if I were to do a podcast, who would I want? What are the topics I want to cover? What's like the mission behind it? And I had started noticing on that plane ride, any like podcast that I was searching up that was about motorsports was very F1 specific, or it was just kind of like shooting the shit, but it was a lot of men. And I was like, actually, I have things to say. And I think that there's an opportunity here to showcase that no matter your interest level or skill set, there's a place for you in motorsport and automotive.
That's incredible. That actually is truly inspirational. Like, don't cut yourself short.
Yeah.
And it reminds me a lot of the conversations that Fatima and I had when we were building up Hold the Pass and kind of what we wanted to do, what we wanted to explore. But I think a lot of those decisions are kind of informed by our own experiences, and it sounds like it's the same for you. So I wanted to ask you, sort of having been immersed in the motorsport industry for quite some time now, about a decade, I would say.
Yeah.
What has your role within it been? How did you get into it? What were some of your first experiences in motorsport, and how did that lead to BeDifferential?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's funny when we talk about motorsports, the industry, because people often discuss joining by karting or when they were a kid or their family was always in it. And that just was not the case for me. I found it by complete accident. I was in school and during my undergrad, and I attended the University of North Georgia. And that facility is near Atlanta Motorsports Park in Dawsonville, which is really a go-kart track. It's a membership-based facility. And at the time, I was putting myself through school, and I just needed a third job. So I literally put in an application and ended up, my only prior working experience at the time was retail. So I started as a cashier, literally at their go-kart track. And at the time, the place that, that facility was kind of divisive between like men work outside and women work inside. And I say this all the time, but if anyone knows me at all, I do not like being put in any kind of box.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately said, okay, how can I get cross trained? What's needed to do this? And I have so many vivid memories of, kind of working there was a really interesting time. It was a lot of young high school and college age students that are running this facility. And anyway, that was kind of my introduction to it. I did end up getting cross trained between every position, between corner marshal to pit steward, mechanic, and so on. And then I ended up kind of identifying some gaps that they had with their members. And so there was actually a position that was created for me that really kind of acted as somewhat of a member liaison or coordinator in those membership communications. And that kind of helped me to broaden the scope of what I was learning, the foundational level. And then I was just through that job, got really introduced on the hobby enthusiast side also. So I was surrounded by people who had some classic cars, and I started kind of spending more time around them, going to car events and so on. And it was like, wait, this is actually way more attainable than I ever thought. It was something that I always saw as like, I can't afford that. I did not grow up in any kind of, flexible money situation. And so it was like, okay, this is actually something that if I work toward, I could achieve. So I ended up kind of feeling that I was outgrowing my time with AMP. And I had no idea that I was so close to a kind of world renowned or at least nationally renowned facility that is Road Atlanta, now Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. And so I started getting there. I started part-time to get my foot in the door, and then ended up working in hospitality and evolved really quickly in my position. So it was hospitality. It was then track rentals and facility sales. And then I finished as director of operations there. And during that time is kind of where I really started feeling this like, ooh, representation is really important. I had never really seen I never felt withheld by being a woman in this space, but ageism really came into play in some of those roles. And so it was something of like, okay, there's things that I can do here and I want to show people they can be here. So yeah, long-winded answer of found it by accident, ended up falling in love with it, being fully consumed by the industry. And now I work for Haggerty. I just passed my 4-year anniversary of working with them. And that has just expanded my kind of role even more from a regional perspective to national and international conversations and partnerships. So that's through these different kind of roles and tenured experiences, I feel I've been able to bring credibility to BeDifferential, but then also highlight other stories. That was very long-winded, but it's a lot to get there.
No, but I think it's wonderful, and it really does give a lot of context to how you got to create BeDifferential, which is key.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I agree with, and you know what I find really fascinating about your story is that you you found it by complete accident, which I find that that's some of the best ways to get into like a career that you love. And the fact that you're right, you didn't come from a space where, you knew motorsport, or came from a space where obviously like when we talk about people getting into motorsport, they have loads and loads of money to afford to be able to build their career into it. But I think what a lot of people fail to realize or understand right now is, starting from not necessarily the bottom, but like starting from
Girl, I was in the bottom. I was in below the bottom.
You're so funny. But like starting from those spaces, because I think a lot of people when they want to get into motorsport now, it's like, ooh, I mean, of course, aim high. I believe in that completely, but it's like the Formula Ones, the Indy cars, the NASCARs. And it's like you and 400,000 other people are fighting for that same role. To build a sustainable long-term career where you can get a good reputation, I do think it does come from starting in those spaces like where you came from and building yourself to be a place where people can recognize what you bring to the table. So I do think that is a piece of, I guess, advice that a lot of people could take away from. And kind of just going into you finding your space in BeDifferential, how do you think community has formed with your podcast? So like, what does community mean to you specifically? And why is it important for you to have a community of your own as a creator in this space?
Oh my God. I mean, it means everything, right? I emphasize so much the importance of networking on BeDifferential, and I would truly be nowhere without the people that were my support system. And I'm a very firm believer in like your chosen family and investing in people that you invest in and invest back in and so on. And that proves true in personal life, but also professional life, right? And I think it's very easy for this industry to become extremely transactional. And I'll do this for you, you do this for me. I think I have become so grateful and blessed of just the people that have been a part of my community that it is a very mutually beneficial, like I'm supporting you in your growth. I'm not offended if you outgrow. I have had mentors that, preceded me in roles and then were not hurt when I succeeded them in other areas. It is very much this mutual support system that ultimately, if we're all excelling, then we're going to continue to excel and grow, and we can all do that together. It really doesn't have to be this scarcity complex. So I think that for me, community has played that personal role. For BeDifferential, I think it's increasing the visibility of people who don't see themselves represented everywhere. So for, kind of working in this space and then evolving what my personal endeavors have been as an enthusiast. Now I own a couple of classic cars. I'm learning and have replaced an engine watching a YouTube video and then showing people that I can do that. Truly, if I can do it, anyone can do it, because like I knew nothing, had no tools, like was renting tools. If you go to AutoZone, you can rent them and bring them back and you get your money back. You know what I mean? Like that was I was doing a lot of walking to and from to get a car working. So like I think that showcasing these examples is like, whether that's as a woman, whether that's as someone that isn't white, I think that there's that necessity to share that visibility. And that's what BeDifferential has become, of this, no matter your background, no matter how tenured you are, no matter if you started at 5 or 35 or 55, there's a place for you. And I think that community that has become to continue growing with BeDifferential just continues to emphasize that. And I really hope it continues on even more.
Wait, I'm so obsessed with that answer.
Yeah.
Sorry, like you just ate that up so bad. Like, two things I really want to talk about with that is, first of all, you're fixing your own classic cars. That is that's like a dream of mine that I'm like, I just can't do it. I can't do it. Okay. Like, what do you even mean? That's insane. And I think that's so awesome. And I really want to emphasize your point about networking. So I volunteer with, Driven by Us, which is like a UK not-for-profit organization. And I work in their social media team. And I was telling Misha this recently, how we had Ariana Bravo, who's an F1 presenter. She came and did a Inclusion Accelerator series talk with us. And one thing that she really emphasized was networking as well, because she kind of came from the same background of like, she did the traditional, she went to school, then she did her like regular 9 to 5 and she just wasn't, happy with it. And then she found motorsport, found presenting, and she said pretty much the exact same things. Networking. And the people that she knew helped her along the way. That is something that she holds dear to her. And that is the one piece of advice that she would give to people who are starting out in this industry. And I think that's so true. I think we have a fear of networking because we don't want to bother people. But at the end of the day, it's like, if they respond back, they respond back. If they don't, you can say you tried and you can move on to someone else. But I do think networking is a very important, important tool to have, really, when it comes to this.
Absolutely. And I would just add, there's one point that when we discuss networking and mentorship, I love to emphasize, because obviously I highlight women in the space, and, you don't have to be like just the traditional image of what motorsports has been. And I think that one thing that comes with that is I get a lot of people who are starting early college or starting to kind of explore. They're like, I really want a female mentor and I really want someone to pour into me. And I always encourage them to not discount the men, because quite frankly, if we are groups that have experienced adversity or lack of representation, the folks that have been present already have experience and credibility that is an opportunity for us to learn from them, right? And so like my number one top mentor is a man 18 years my senior, and literally like I would not be where I am had he not poured back into me. And to your point, Fatima, like if I just started a conversation and he just like never responded, that's fine. I gave myself the opportunity for him to not respond rather than just never giving myself the chance. But now, like, I've literally known him since the first year that I started working in motorsports. 10 years later, like that's whose shop I go work on my cars in, you know what I mean? So it's like, just never discount, that anyone can be an asset to you, and in return, a just mutually beneficial dynamic.
Oh, absolutely.
100%. I agree with that. And I think Fatima and I have also seen that in our own experience of just like, after we record an episode, like, how you always end up chatting with your guests for a bit, like they'll always say like, oh, like check out like this person or check out that person, or like maybe you'd be interested in interviewing them or something. And I think it goes a long way in not only helping you, but a lot of the time, like you're helping the other person as well. Like it's very symbiotic, and that's so key when it comes to actually forming a community. You can't just it's not a one-way street.
Absolutely.
And I think that's so, like Fatima said, what you said absolutely hit the nail on the head. And it makes me think about a topic that we've already touched on a little bit, but we've spoken a bit about your background and you taking a slightly less traditional path into motorsports. Your show, BeDifferential, does focus on a lot of people who have had very untraditional paths into this space. So I wanted to ask if you could speak a bit about why those stories matter so much when it comes to building a welcoming community.
Oh my God, totally. Yeah, literally one of my favorite stories of people that I've interviewed is Therese Lalu. And she is literally someone that was working in hospitality. She like went to school to be a chef or something. And then at like 35 decided she wanted to drive race cars and did it and is doing it and competes within IMSA, is a presenter for Porsche Carrera Cup, and just like a number of other things. And I think that she is a woman who just is a perfect example of, hey, I don't like, just because I decided something when I was 18 doesn't mean that that's what I'm pigeonholed to for the rest of my life. And I think that that message right there is something that so many people need to hear, because I think back to my younger self and I literally gave myself stomach ulcers, like from stress when I was in high school and college of like, oh my God, all these decisions are end all be all. And I mean, I was someone who was literally living less than paycheck to paycheck. It really does feel like those things, because when it's not a luxury of making just like decisions, when you have to say, okay, this is necessity and you are exhausted and you can't pick up more shifts because you're already working 7 days a week, there is this hope that, okay, this isn't forever. And on a whim, like as long as I have some logic and some reasoning and like at least a partial plan, I can pivot and do whatever. And like, I mean, I was going to school in college to teach English internationally as a second language. like motorsports was nowhere on the radar. And so like one, I'm an example of this, that like a pivot can happen, but I love hearing the stories of guests that come on the podcast and just share like, maybe I started at 5 and had to work my way up, but the path still wasn't linear. But then there's others that are like, I just came in and was like, I'm going to try it. And you know what? If you're not afraid of failure, you're going to keep failing until you win. And like, that's a great story to hear too, So I think that all of those examples, no matter what, each is going to resonate with someone different. And that one person that it resonates with could be the next F1 driver, could be, the next person who is a grand marshal or is a decision maker, an engineer or whatever. Like that could be enough to just ignite this, oh, I could do that too. And I just needed that reminder that like, I don't have to be stuck in whatever situation I'm in.
Absolutely. I think that's something that I think Misha and I can relate to so well. I think for myself, like that career pivot is such a scary thing, but like, you're right. When I was 18, I had no business picking the career choices that I was 18.
Right.
What did I know about 18?
Why did the system set us up for that?
Honestly.
No, for real. Like it starts even earlier because you have to like pick your prerequisites in high school, and like it has to start all the way with like grade 9.
I know.
We can't even legally do a lot of things, but I'm allowed to pick my entire career by the age of 18 and just stick with that one thing for the rest of my life. Okay, sure.
Like I can't run a car, but
But no, I really do appreciate the stories of people who did do that pivot when they're, like you said, 35, when they're 40, when they're even 50, because it's like, you don't have to stay in that one space. And I don't think that's how the world works. You even see that with people and like switching their jobs like every 2-3 years, because staying in one space, I don't think we're just meant to do that in general. So that is something that I really agree with. And funny that you said you're going to do the teaching as a second language, because Misha actually has some connection to that.
That was one of my pivots. Sure. Okay. That was one of my pivots.
But to pivot kind of back into our community related questions. So in the Formula One space, since 2020, I think we could say that we've seen a huge new wave of fans, not just in Formula One, but across motorsport as a whole. And with the growth of the sport in pop culture, I would say we've had many communities emerge within the industry. So we've had the gearheads, and then we also had the intersection of fashion and motorsport, and then we have the STEM enthusiasts and so much more. Given this influx of diverse sub-communities, do you think that these communities have genuinely retained fans in the sport as a whole, or is it a passing wave or a trend of the times?
I think there's elements where maybe it will be a trend, but like in very just small snippets. And I say that because I think it will retain people, but maybe they'll pivot again later. You know what I mean? So when we're looking at these subgroups of, okay, we have our fashion forward F1 fans, that is getting them introduced to it and planting the seed. And maybe they're going to be in this automotive space for a small moment and then branch on. But I think that we'll see homage back to that era if they do evolve beyond it. And so I think it could be both, right? It's like two things can be true at the same time of having, yes, this person maybe got introduced in it now, but we may see it in their products or work later. And then it could also be, hey, they started in this kind of fashion forward space and now they're looking at safety equipment because it doesn't fit every body the same. And we have to factor these things. So it could totally open up new perspectives of like, I never considered that before. And now here's a whole other market that I can appeal to and I can learn about and I can work on. And that's just the fashion world. Like if we're talking about so many others of people watching F1 and then they're saying, oh, maybe I could change my own oil. Well, now you just are able to say, okay, well, if I can change my own oil, now I have the confidence to try changing my own brake pads or, something like that. So I think that, again, it's sparking this little, I think I can. And in that mentality, I think that it keeps that retention, even if that's like a small, okay, now I have this skill set for the rest of my life, or now I have this interest, or now I'm going to make someone watch F1 with me. Like, I think that it's enough that it doesn't have to be this whole encompassing, like it's taken over my life. But I do think that it will retain into future generations and new groups.
That is so true. And I think what you said was something that I think a lot of people don't necessarily consider when talking about fandom, and that is that it doesn't have to be your core interest for it to be dear to your heart. But it's actually so funny that you mentioned fashion, because that leads perfectly into the next question that we had for you, which is to do with the way that a lot of fans are entering the motorsport space, be it through, like you said, fashion or lifestyle content, or even different forms of storytelling, like on social media with personalities, TikToks, Drive to Survive, even I would include in that, and like Driver's Own Instagram accounts and stuff like that. What we're seeing now, I think, is that a lot of fans are coming in and then continuing to consume motorsport content through social media, through these clips and curated moments, rather than the races themselves. So they're still part of motorsport fandom, just in a different way. And I wanted to ask, do you think that changes how communities form around sport, and if people are connecting more through moments and narratives rather than the race weekends?
I think also a little bit of both, right? I think that for me, it's so funny when we use like the phrase of fandom because I don't consider myself a good fan at all. I think, again, we talked about this a little bit on my podcast, but when you're in it, it's somewhat harder to observe and kind of be adjacent to it instead of in it. And it doesn't discount or discredit any kind of fandom. But I think that we're looking at the distinction between fans and people that have an appreciation for, but it's not all consuming. And I think that both are very valid groups, right? So like for me, I work in it. I'm probably going to watch like the highlights and like maybe I'll have it on in the background while I'm also working on XYZ. But it's like, this isn't something where I'm like popcorn, oh my God, what's happening? And I don't think that that discredits either. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased of like, I don't watch all races, every race or whatever. But I think that both of those feed the community as a whole, right? They feed the industry as a whole. They're bringing in new partnerships. Like, I think we talked about this briefly, but seeing examples of like Dermalogica doing a pop-up at the Miami GP, like that's a whole audience. It doesn't matter if you like motorsport or not. Like, if you need sunscreen, like you need face wash, please. If for the listeners, if you don't, you do.
Especially sunscreen at races. Oh my God.
Tell them again.
Yeah, but it's like, it's really though, it's like now we're seeing these audiences. So from like a professional perspective, from an engagement perspective, we're now seeing avenues in that honestly is what BeDifferential is all about. Again, no matter your skill set or interest level, there's a place for you. And all of these examples showcase that. So yeah, I think it maybe alters the community a bit, but not necessarily in a negative way. I think everything it's like a little bit of that all PR is good PR type of thing. I think that that plays in here.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think we briefly discussed this on your pod as well, but I think like a lot of the times when you join into a new fandom, it is all consuming.
You're all in.
You know, you're all in. And then like as time goes on, you kind of, because it's just not feasible to be completely all in, especially the older you get, the more responsibilities you have. And, you know, sometimes your interest is not as much as it was when you first came in, but like you do have the casual viewer who still stays up to date on what's happening, but they don't actually sit down and watch a race. For Formula One, watching a race like every Sunday is just not possible.
Well, especially like now it's the race. Canadian GP was the last one that's going to be in our time zone. You know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not waking up at 4 a.m.
It's
like
just
it's not
happening.
No,
totally.
I do not have that level of commitment.
I gotta work the next day. Like I want to have a good night's sleep. It's just not happening.
Exactly.
Well, and I'll add, you know, I think too, when we look at motorsports, it's very easy to come into this industry and feel inadequate of like, oh, everyone knows everything. No one can know everything. So if we're just talking about F1 right now. If you want to be up to date on F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, IMSA, NHRA, like all of these other, you like feasibly you can't, like it's not an option to be able to. So it's like, okay, you can consume casually and like be up to date and be a Jack and Jill of all trades, you know, but like I don't think that it needs to be all consuming. Maybe when you're learning, to your point of like, let me get the introduction, the education, and then okay, now I can kind of pick and choose when I want to watch.
Exactly. I mean, prime example is we had like 3 big races happen yesterday.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. At the same time.
Literally. So yeah, it's genuinely just not possible. But kind of on that, so recently, and I think there's a lot of reasons why this is happening. When we talk about Formula One, I'm a fan of Formula One not being the end all and be all of all motorsport. I do believe that there's so much that people should be taking note of when it comes to the industry, and that there's so many different series that they would thoroughly enjoy if they just stepped out of the Formula One box. But what's happening right now is I'm seeing a lot of chatter about fans feeling a little bit disconnected from Formula One this year. And that could be for a multitude of reasons. I mean, we had like a month off after like the first 2 races.
Yeah, literally.
And then we had a race and then 2 weeks off. And then we had a race and now we have another week off. So there's not been a lot of Formula One this season, but we've seen the rise of hockey in pop culture specifically because we're in North America. So hockey is always a big deal for us here. But I'm seeing, you know, with the rise of heated rivalry and then of course the off-campus series that just came out, I've noticed that there's a lot of fans in the Formula One world who are gradually shifting their attention towards hockey related media, What are your thoughts on this shift? And what do you think Formula One could do to hold on to this core demographic, as it seems to be that they're slowly losing it a little bit?
This is so funny to me. I also have been witness. I will admit I have not read or watched Heated Rivalry yet. I have heard all about it, and I have seen so many clips.
Oh my God.
But I will say, like, inadvertently, I also kind of became a hockey fan in the past few months because I like moved. I did like a small move, and long story short, I'm in Athens briefly.
Okay.
So UGA, and here there is a regional team called the Rock Lobsters, and I went to my first hockey game, and it was the best time. Like, y'all, they're the crustacean nation. If when they make a goal, they say claws up, like, and they're like sponsored by White Claw. Like,
I'm obsessed.
Literally, it was the most fun. And I think for me, I don't know that it's like you're losing F1 fans to hockey, but I think that it's such a much more visceral experience of like, you can see the entirety of what's happening. You are engaged. They're very fan forward of like, anytime the puck is not on the ice, like there is something pulling your attention. That's not the case for F1, right? Like, it's like we now have all these ads when we're streaming. We now have like, okay, we're going from panning this. We can't see all parts of the track when we're watching it. So I think that it's two different audiences, but there's room for crossover, right? And quite frankly, the seasons don't align. Like, there's some crossover, but like, I think F1 has that advantage of like hockey isn't around year round. I mean, it kind of is, but not really, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like F1 could take lessons away from that, though, of how do we actually engage more of our fans? But without going too far down, I think that it raises a larger question of are we focused on engaging more fans, or are we focused on increasing capital? And I think that those are kind of really what's feeding in, because like we see this with a K-shaped economy on travel right now. Like, where you can bring one person to an F1 race at a VVIP level that is $100,000, or you can have, you know, hundreds of people coming at a couple $100 or thousands of people. Like, and which one is making a lesser impact on the infrastructure? Which one do you have to consider less? And so I think that if we answered that question, then F1 could learn some lessons about how to engage more fans. But if we're just focused on increasing capital, I don't know that we'll see that. And maybe there will be a shift where we've hit a peak and there's a little burnout.
That is a very, very good point. And I think you're right. A lot of the time it feels like F1 is very focused on getting, just like hitting a certain number, hitting a certain quota of viewers, of watchers, of whatever audience members, tickets sold, without necessarily thinking about the kind of, not the long term, but how do we maintain that connection? It could be 1,000 people this year, but 2,000 people the next year. It's within that 2,000, the original 1,000 might not even be there, right?
It's so true. And it's like, you know, to both of your points, if we want to look at long-term sustainability in viewership, which is necessary just because that's how the corporations are structured right now, like, we do have to engage the people that are watching who may not be there. But how do you do that if they're constantly feeling disconnected? So yeah, I think that finding ways to really meet people where they are is important. And there's so much of this exclusivity mindset of like, yes, that has to exist to a certain extent, but also to your point, Misha, if you want people to keep watching from home, they have to still feel like they're a part of it and not like outcasted, you know?
Exactly. And I think just kind of following up on that and the idea of building community, which has been the overarching theme of our conversation today, is I want to kind of turn towards how that's reflected in social media and communities that are being built online, specifically looking at our collaboration, for example, between our two platforms. I want to ask, do you think that motorsport communities online are becoming more collaborative or more fragmented and kind of competitive and fighting over audiences as the space grows online?
Yeah, I do think there are elements of larger collaboration. Like I've seen that firsthand of some creators that are getting really, really creative on how they include other creators, and they're kind of going to these events together, they're making content together, they're strategizing and like getting, hey, we're community driven. But then at the same time, I think we're actually kind of seeing more of a rise of like these clicks. So it's like I personally, at least, maybe it's my algorithm, like I'm starting to see like the same 10 creators that are going to all of these. And it's like, that's great because they're building relationships with those brands, or they have the resources to be able to go to those. But it is a little bit of this like, we're kind of separating like a little bit of elitism, and it's no like shade to anyone. I just think that that's kind of the result of what's being rewarded, whether that's by the algorithm or by the companies that are partnering with these creators or so on. But I think it's starting to, like, there was some conversation around TikTok a year or two ago about how influencers, like there's a huge shift in what's happening, and it's not like we're feeling too detached from these influencers that are like living these crazy lives and private jets and like whatever, to like the more everyday kind of creator that feels more relatable and kind of like the early 2010 YouTube era, like whatever. And I think that that is starting to happen, at least what I'm seeing on Instagram as well. So it's like, if we want to keep encouraging new people, we do want a little bit of this like FOMO element, but we don't want it to be so FOMO that it's like you're never going to be attainable for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that there are communities. I think that F1 and other series are starting to notice the power of influencers and what that can do for their audience. But I think there should be a little tale of caution for making sure that it's not just like, okay, now we just have another exclusive element within this already exclusive kind of world.
Yeah. And I think that's a difficult one to navigate, because obviously like the same 10 influencers that are or creators that are at these spaces, they obviously have the following. So, so Formula One, the teams are like, okay, we know this is a tried and true method, so we're just going to continue on. But like, again, I feel like it's like a double-edged sword, because it's great that they are bringing them in, but it is quite harsh for like the up and coming ones. But also because people keep seeing the same people over and over again, it gets to a point where you're like, well, I don't want to keep up with this. And it kind of takes away from their influence a little bit, because now people are like, well, we've seen this person here 20,000 times. So I don't want to follow up with it anymore because I already know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it becomes predictable. Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I do think it is quite interesting, and I'm very curious to see where people are going to, how this space is going to navigate. But I do think also when it comes to like smaller series, you do see like up and coming creators who go to these events, and there's so much passion there that like it really brings my attention, at least, into whatever it is that they're showcasing at that specific series that they're at. But I guess with that, I mean, like, you've been in this space for about 10 years now, and I feel like you've definitely seen it all during your time here, and there's probably so much more to see. What would you say is the most unexpected way people have engaged with BeDifferential? So may that be, feedback, conversations, or even just how they've connected with each other and you because of it?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I did not read far enough ahead to think about this. Let's see. Honestly, I think it's actually a few ways that were maybe surprising but more fulfilling. Of like, I think along the conversation we just had, to kind of round that out with like creators in this space, people can tell if there's authenticity or not. And I think that that's kind of my real beef. Isn't like if the same creators are going, it's like that you can see it's just a job, or like just it's something that they're marking off to get a check, which I appreciate, get your bag. But it's like at the same time, the authenticity and like the true relationship and like care about bringing people into the space, like that's been my mission from the beginning. Of like, I am not like seeking fame. Like I'm just like, I just want people to know they can. And I think BeDifferential is still very small, right? Like I think on Instagram, I literally have, it's like 1,600 followers or something. And it's existed for over 2 years. Like, honestly, that's kind of tragic. But like, if we're talking about it, but like for me, I'm like, this is such an engaged community where every week more or less. Sometimes I'm bad about it. I do like a coffee and chit chat in my stories. And it's literally like a question box. If we were over like having a coffee, what are we yapping about? And like it has been such a fun way to actually engage. It's not just like a call to action. It's not like I'm selling you on something. It's not like, oh, ask me questions because I'm like this all-knowing, credible. Like, no, it's literally just like, hey, we're people and like we have similar interests and that's cool. And we come from all over the world, all walks of life. Like, so that has been really fun and rewarding. And then I think too, like the amount of random like messages I'll get where people are like, I saw you at this event. I saw you here and wasn't sure if it was you. So I was scared to say hi, or like, which honestly I get, but also like, I'm going to say hi in person. Like I can yap to anyone, but like, I think there's been a few where like this one girl in particular, messaged and she was like, I didn't know if I should message you on your personal account or your podcast account. And like, I think we like kind of live in the same city. I don't know. But I would love to just sit down and have coffee. She's 18. She's like going into college. This is like a couple years ago now. Like I've known her for years. It was literally, I think my podcast had like 200 followers or something. And literally we ended up getting coffee, which also like stranger danger. Maybe I should have like vetted deeper. I don't know. Don't you know. But it has turned into this like super sweet. She's so kind. She's so driven. She's still early in her career and there's like so much drive and like enthusiasm. And it's a great reminder for me because I can be desensitized to these things and I can be like just kind of burnt out. And it's like, oh, yes, the light is there. So I think that those types of moments that are really fulfilling or like getting to pour back in the way that so many people believed in me and poured into me has been like the best and I guess most surprising part of the podcast.
That's incredible. That is so heartwarming to hear.
Yeah, I know.
That's honestly, it's moments like that that really make this sort of stuff worth it. Is like you said, we're not in it for the fame. We're not in it for any sort of notoriety by any means. It's more just like, this is something that we love so much. We love talking about it. We want to talk about it and connect and share these stories because honestly, the amount of absolutely incredible people there are in motorsports is astounding.
Yeah.
So to kind of end things off and wrap things up, we have one last question for you. It's a two-parter. As they always are on our pod, but kind of speaking about the almost disconnect that there is between the industry itself and the people that are in it. Can you comment on what the wider motorsport industry can learn from these smaller creators and communities that are actually engaging with each other and building a community?
Mm-hmm. I think honestly, listen, I like money. I like making more. I want us to all succeed and get our bag. Like I've come from nothing, don't really want to go back to nothing.
That part.
But I think like these larger organizations do need to take just a moment because like when you are in such an established organization, industry, space, company, whatever it is, it's very, very, very easy. We're constantly looking forward, which we should, right? From like a development perspective and a growth perspective. But it is coming at the cost of like people who are our community. So like I think about this all the time. And unfortunately, like in my work day to day, not necessarily with my company, but like with just people I see, it's these examples of we need to focus on high net worth. We need to focus on how we can get the most notoriety and the most value. And that is important, right? We all have a bottom line, but we are literally forgetting the grassroots. We're forgetting the people that then become those other people. And if you're not encouraging those, like there's going to be a deficit in so many areas, whether that's in fans, in new drivers that are trying to make it to their space. Like we've seen this similar, somewhat same kind of lineup of F1 drivers for a few years. Like there's going to be gaps. And so it's like there does need to be some kind of checks and balances there of like, these are important numbers to hit, but we need to ensure that we're pouring back in to the feeder series into this. So I think that's the biggest like takeaway. And that's really hard to look at a CEO or a CFO and say like, hey, might take a cut, but like, honestly, it is going to impact the long term in a positive way. But nobody wants to hear that.
No, nobody wants to say, hey, can you not try to get like a massive profit next year and instead focus on actually making a community that people want to be part of long term?
Yeah. And I think that that's like where the difference of having leaders that are also enthusiasts or that also have a passion about it and it isn't just a job. And that's hard to kind of facilitate too when you're looking at corporations and so on. But like that's meant a lot to me. Like in this podcast, I have not prioritized monetizing whatsoever because I told myself, like, for the first 2 years, I literally said, I don't even want to try because I want to make sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons. And I don't want this to be just a revenue stream and then it feel like a job. Like I want to make sure. And I just, like, I had that check with myself, and I'm not saying I'm doing it right. I'm just saying, like, I think that that is a reminder that people need to take that moment of pause for.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's so hard. I mean, with just because how do I word this? It's just like, how do I word this? I do agree with that. And I think it is really hard because this is something that you're so passionate about. The minute it turns into something that you monetize, it's like, okay, it is a job and you have to, and you kind of lose that passion for it. And, you know, Tasia, when we had Tasia on our pod, she kind of mentioned something similar in the sense of because she loves the sport so much, there are certain things that she'll say no to because she doesn't want to lose that spark. And I'm like, I get that 100%. Yeah. And just to go back on like, you know, supporting the feeder series and like pouring more into that. I think that is something that we definitely need to do. I know Misha and I, we had a guest lined up and they unfortunately couldn't make it because their sponsorship fell through right at the very last minute. And they were like, I'm going to try and join you guys, but like, I got to figure out if I can get a sponsorship, And that didn't end up happening. I'm like, that's so hurtful because like you have these people who are very talented, who are very passionate and, you know, they can produce results. But if the money is not backing them, then they just kind of fall into obscurity and then we never hear from them again, which is really shameful.
Yeah, this is such a recurring topic. And I know we're closing out here, but it's just, you know, motorsports is not a meritocracy. And that's what's really unfortunate is like, you know, if you're a good golfer, ideally you're going to go far. You know, the barrier to entry is somewhat lower and like you show up and you perform and then you go. With motorsports, especially from like a female perspective, I think, don't directly quote me on this, but I think it's like 3% of total funding across all sports is dedicated to women. And so it's like, we're not even talking about being able to get the funds to go on track. Like that's the last thing. We're talking about they also need to be able to perform, get track days for test time, get development in the gym, have pro trainers, like these types of things. It's not a talent issue whatsoever. Like it's really not. It's that feeding and supporting into it. It's a funding issue. But anyway,
that's a conversation.
A whole other,
I was just about to say that is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but a very important conversation that we should have in the future.
Yes.
But oh my god, yeah. I was also going to say really quickly before we get to the last question is just in terms of being a creator and trying to monetize. I feel like especially for people who kind of like grew up around a lot of these influencers and who grew up in this like this outside pressure to constantly be making something out of yourself, there's almost an expectation to monetize your hobbies. Like it's almost expected that, okay, you're good at something, you enjoy doing it, now go make money out of it. And that kind of, again, a conversation for a different day, but it definitely does affect the creator. So to finish up, our last question is taking the reverse of what I just asked you and asking, what do you think that creators, especially smaller ones like us, could learn from the wider motorsport industry about scaling audiences but maintaining credibility or even long-term sustainability?
Yeah, I definitely think that authenticity is it still, right? It's like if you are a creator and you're just wanting to show up because like F1 has become somewhat of a fad or you want to just be in the spotlight, like I think you have to care. And, you know, whether F1 is capitalist and evolving and focused on the glam and less of the sport or whatever it may have you, I think that they know through and through their lineage, right? Like they pay homage to it so many times over. They nod back to previous races or previous drivers or circuits that they don't even run anymore, and really appreciate what has built what they are now. And I think that that's something that is important, like as we're talking about this community and authenticity throughout this conversation. As a creator, you have to care about what you're doing, and even if it like kind of sucks sometimes or doesn't look glamorous or isn't selling this, like you're missing out. It's like reminder, I'm here because I love this type of thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us, Ava. This has been, over the span of your pod and our pod, I've thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. And I know Misha has as well. And we hope that you enjoyed our conversations. And before we let you go, can you please let our audience know where they can find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for this conversation. It's always fun being on the other side of the mic and kind of discussing the community from this perspective. You guys can find all of my stuff. BeDifferentialPodcast.com is probably the easiest. It's all in one place, but it is BeDifferential Podcast on Instagram and on wherever you listen to your audio. So yeah, BeDifferentialPodcast.com.
It's amazing. And thank you again so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. This has been the Hold the Past podcast. I've been your host, Fatima.
And I've been your host, Misha.
And we had such a wonderful time speaking with Ava today, and she was just such an amazing guest to have on. If you haven't watched our episode on her podcast at BeDifferential, please make sure you go ahead and do so. If you liked this episode, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to share as well. You can find us at Hold the Past Pod on Instagram and TikTok. You can also find us at Hold the Past Pod anywhere you listen to your podcasts from. And if you want to reach out to us, you can email us at holdthepastpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.